I let my son see his real dad again, then I kissed him, lied to my partner, used his money to keep my ex around, and left my little boy asking if I still loved him. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. I knew it was wrong. I knew the exact moment his lips touched mine. There wasn't passion or love or desire, just a bitter feeling, like I was signing the sentence for something I didn't even want to finish losing. But I did it, and now I'm paying for it every day. I'm 28 years old with an 8-year-old son. His biological father disappeared from our lives when he was just 6. It was one of those toxic relationships that slowly eats away at you until there's nothing left but habit and fear. He cheated on me, he left me, and he never looked back. Until recently, I had rebuilt my life. Or so I thought. I was living with my new partner, a good, patient man who accepted my son as his own. We were far from perfect, but for the first time in years, I felt a kind of peace. We had a home, a routine, a family that, even if patched together, worked. Then he appeared, my son's father, as if 2 years of absence could be erased with a text message. "I want to see him," he told me. I know I was an idiot, but I'm ready to be in his life. I didn't believe him. Obviously, after so much time, just when everything was starting to be okay, but my son kept asking about him. Every so often, in a small voice, he'd say, "Where's my real dad?" He forgot me too, and that was breaking my heart, so I gave in. I told him he could see him just for a little while under my supervision, a park, a square, somewhere neutral. My partner wasn't happy with the idea, but he tried to understand. The first time he saw him, my son froze. He looked at him as if he didn't know whether to run and hug him or hide behind me. And when he finally hugged him, it hurt me, not because I loved him, but because I realized how much he had needed him. The visits started to be weekly, always in open places, always with me nearby. My partner asked me not to go, that it wasn't necessary for me to be at all of them. I lied to him. I told him it was for safety, that it was better this way, that nothing was happening, but something was happening. Every outing was a new wound. Seeing how my son looked at him, how he talked to him, how he imitated him, made me feel like I had failed, that no matter how much love, how much effort, I couldn't give him that. I couldn't be a mother and a father. I couldn't fill such a specific void. One afternoon, my son's father asked me to go for a drink while the boy played with some friends. It was a cafe half a block away, nothing intimate, nothing suspicious. He told me about how much he'd changed, how he'd understood everything too late, that he wanted to be present. "I'm not asking you to get back together," he said. "Just let me fix something, even if it's just a little bit." And then it happened. We fell silent. We looked at each other. He leaned in. I didn't move, and he kissed me. It wasn't him. It was me. I was the one who broke everything. I went home with my stomach in knots. I didn't say anything. I slept as if I had stones on top of me. The next day, I acted normal. I made breakfast. I helped with homework. I put on makeup, so my swollen eyes wouldn't show. I thought I had buried it, but children see everything. Days later, while I was washing the dishes and my partner was tidying up the living room, my son dropped the bomb. Mommy kissed the other daddy. There weren't screams, just silence. A silence so heavy I thought it was going to crush me. My partner looked at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask me, he didn't doubt, he just went to the room and closed the door. And I, stupid, paralyzed, didn't know whether to run after him or hug my son so he wouldn't see how everything was starting to break. From that moment on, nothing was ever the same. He didn't yell, he didn't insult me, he didn't ask for explanations. That silence was worse. It was like being locked in a house with walls full of dynamite and not knowing which wire to cut first. He spent the night on the couch. I slept or pretended to sleep in bed with my son. He noticed something. He snuggled closer than usual. He caressed my arm with his warm little fingers. He whispered to me, "Don't be sad, Mommy." And I broke inside. The next day I wanted to talk. I looked for words. And "I'm sorry, it was a mistake," and nothing else happened, but he wouldn't look at me. He did everything with a mechanical calm, like someone who has already given up. The crack was already open. The following week, everything was curt, brief, loose phrases. The food's ready. Are you taking him to school? I'm leaving. Don't wait up for me. I kept taking my son to see his father out of inertia, out of routine, out of guilt because I didn't want him to pay for my mistakes. But every time I did, it felt like a double betrayal to my partner and to myself. One afternoon, my partner, came home with a fever. He looked pale, weak. He asked me not to leave him alone, to please stay this time, but I had already made plans with my son's father, and he had said he had something special to show him. I didn't know how to say, no. I left. I left the man who opened his home to me, who raised my son as if he were his own alone, with a fever and without an answer. That was the second crack. The third came on his birthday. I had promised him we'd be together. A quiet dinner, nothing fancy, just the three of us. But on that very day, my son's father called. I bought a bike for him. I want to give it to him today. And like an idiot, I canceled our plans. We left. We spent hours at the park, laughter, ice cream, pictures, as if everything were fine, as if the world wasn't falling apart behind me. I came back late. He was already asleep. There was a blown-out candle on the table, a single plate with leftover cake. He didn't say anything to me, not the next day nor the next, but the look he gave me that morning was the same one you give someone you no longer recognize. And still, I told myself, I'm doing it for my son, everything for him. Then I started doing something even worse. The biological father would ask me for help, for rent, for the gas bill, for some money for school, even though he hadn't enrolled him yet. And I used the money my partner gave me, that money he set aside for the child. I passed it along without saying anything, as if I could buy his presence with it, as if I could ensure that this time the father would stay. It was the final stab. One day we were all at home, tension in the air. I was trying to cook, to pretend everything was normal. The boy was playing with his toys. My partner was cleaning in silence. Then my son, without realizing it, dropped another bomb. My other daddy said he's going to take care of us now because mommy gives him money for that. Silence. Hard, icy. My partner turned around.
He looked at me.
Not with hatred. With pity. With defeat.
Seriously.
I just can't believe you'd do this. Seriously. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He put down what he was holding. He went to the room, closed the door. This time there were no bangs or slams, just a confinement that lasted 2 days. On the third day, he came out with a suitcase.
Not his, mine.
You have 2 weeks to leave. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to understand it. I don't want to forgive you.
And our son? I asked. He's not our son, he said.
He's your son. And you made your decisions.
I didn't know what to say.
I just stood there with a lump in my throat. That night, I slept on the floor with my son. He didn't ask much. He just hugged me tight and said, I don't like it when they leave. And I, pressing him against my chest, the only thing I thought was, and what if this time the one who leaves is me? That word drilled into me for days because no matter how I spun it, everything led back to me. I was the one who let herself get dragged away by a poison nostalgia. I was the one who wanted to compensate for an absence with a bought presence. I was the one who broke something that, while not perfect, was real. The deadline came sooner than expected. There was no drama, no final fight, just a last cold breakfast where my partner left me an envelope with some money and a handwritten note. I don't hate you, but I can't do this anymore. I hope you find peace. May he grow up better than us. He didn't sign it. He didn't have to. I packed what little I had left in a suitcase, a few changes of clothes, my son's books, an old stuffed animal. I even took the plastic plates he loved, as if that would give him some stability in the midst of the chaos. I called the biological father. I explained everything. I told him we'd been kicked out, that I needed to stay for a few days, that he didn't have to take care of us, that it was just for the boy. And, you won't be able to help me with the money anymore, was the first thing he said. No, now everything I have is for survival. Silence. Oh, well, I'll see. I'll let you know. He never let me know. I called him 3 more times. Silence.
Blocked.
The end. I went back to my parents' house with my head down. They opened the door. but not their hearts. What did you expect? My mother said. We warned you. My father didn't even look at me. He just pointed to the back room, the one they used for storing old things. That's where we slept. My son didn't say anything for the first few days. He just looked at me with those tired eyes of a child who has seen too much. At night he'd wake up scared. He'd look for me and say, "We're just visiting." And I didn't know what to tell him because I didn't know if this was temporary or the new hell. I tried to find a job, resumes, interviews, white lies, but I had nowhere to leave the boy. My parents told me it wasn't their problem, that I had to figure it out, that just as I had time to kiss one man and take money from another, I could also get a job. One afternoon, while my son was watching cartoons on the old TV in the back, my mother called me to the kitchen. She looked me up and down. She said, "You're not a little girl anymore. You're a mother. So start acting like one." And she left. I felt myself shrink. I went back to the room and sat next to my son. He caressed my arm. He looked at me and said, "Why is everyone mad at you?" I didn't know what to answer. My eyes filled with tears. He hugged me as if I were the scared little girl, not the other way around. That night I exploded. I was tired, frustrated, broken. He wanted to play. I just wanted silence. He insisted. He hugged me, and I pushed him away. "Stop. Not everything is about you, you know?" He stood still, looking at me, his giant eyes full of confusion and sadness. I knew it wasn't his fault, but the words were already out. I locked myself in the bathroom to cry. I hit the wall. I bit my arm so I wouldn't scream. I hated myself. I hated myself more than ever. My father knocked on the door. "Don't start with the hysterics. We've got enough to deal with giving you a roof over your head." And that's when I knew. I no longer had a place or a partner or a family or dignity. All I had left was him, my son, and I felt like I was losing even him. I promised myself I wouldn't hurt him again, that I'd do whatever it took to get out of there, to stop repeating this chain of mistakes. But the universe didn't seem to be done with me. A couple of days later, I got a call. A woman was renting a room with a separate entrance. Cheap, small, but my own. I went to see it. I accepted. I moved in the next day. I told my son we were finally going to have our own home. He smiled, but not with excitement, with relief, as if something had finally stopped hurting. We slept on an inflatable mattress. It deflates every night, but he doesn't complain. One day, upon waking up, he told me, "I used to like sleeping. Now I dream that everything breaks again." I didn't say anything. I just hugged him and wondered if one day I would stop breaking everything. Sometimes I feel like I was born with that gift, the one of turning whatever I touch into rubble. I don't know if it's bad luck, bad decisions, or if it's just me. But since I left my parents' house, all I do is try to build something with hands full of guilt. The room I rented is tiny. An inflatable bed, a portable stove, a crooked coat rack, and a window that doesn't close properly. But my son called it our house, and for a moment that made it all worthwhile. The first few days were strange. We walked on tiptoes. We spoke in whispers, as if we were in someone else's home. Maybe we were. The landlady, an older woman, kind but distant, made it clear we were just passing through. I tried my best. I took temporary jobs. I babysat. I cleaned houses. I sold sweets on the street. I'd come back exhausted, with swollen fingers and a numb body. But every night I'd tell my son stories as if nothing was wrong, as if the world wasn't crushing us. He in his innocence tried to make me smile. He drew me with a superhero cape. He called me brave mommy, and every time I heard it I broke a little more. Because it wasn't true, because I was pretending, because the brave one wasn't me, it was him. One afternoon, while I was combing his hair for school, he looked at me in the mirror and asked, "Mommy, do you need time to love me again too?" I froze. I felt my heart drop to my feet. "Why do you say that, my love?" "Because since we've been here, you don't hug me the same way." I didn't know what to answer. I hugged him tight, so tight, but inside me something broke for good, because no matter how much I wanted to rebuild us, he had already noticed the change. And children don't forget how they feel. That same day, coming back from work, I found the door locked. The lady was waiting for me with her arms crossed.
I'm sorry.
This is no place to raise a child. He makes noise. He runs, he leaves his toys. He gets on my nerves. I tried to calm her down. I asked her for a little more time. I said we had nowhere to go. That's not my problem.
My dear.
You should have thought of that before. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded. I locked myself in with my son, gave him a warm bath and put him to bed. That night we slept on the floor. The inflatable bed was useless now. And while he breathed softly, with his fist clenched around his favorite toy, I stared at the cracked ceiling and thought, there's no one left to call. My ex-partner blocked. My son's father disappeared. My parents indifferent. I thought about leaving my son with someone else just for a while, until I could get stable. It took me days to make the decision, entire days looking at his sleeping face, wondering if that would make me a worse mother or a better one. Finally, I called a distant cousin, one of those people who were always on the periphery of life, who offered help with a timid voice and a look of, I don't want to judge you, but she accepted without conditions, without judgment. She opened her home to me, she made him a bed, she cooked him his favorite food, and he, though scared, adapted quickly. The last night before I left him, I took him to the park. We played like we used to. Laughter, races, hide and seek. It was as if nothing had happened, but just as I tucked him in and gave him the last kiss on his forehead, he took my hand and said, Mommy, this time come back. Yes, I didn't cry in front of him, but as soon as I closed the door I collapsed. That sentence was harder than any complaint, more piercing than any judgment, because he wasn't asking me to take him somewhere else. He wasn't asking for toys or a house or food. He was asking for me, for his mom, the one who was getting lost among guilt, mistakes, and ruins. I went to sleep on a friend's sofa, one of those who isn't tired of rescuing me yet. I've been here for days looking for something, a job, a shelter, a sign, anything. Every morning I wake up wondering if I did the right thing, if staying away was protecting him, or just another way of giving up. There are no answers, just this emptiness that follows me wherever I go. And my son's voice repeating in my head, this time come back. Yes, that phrase is with me every day. Not as a tender memory, not as a hope, but as a cruel echo of what I'm no longer sure I can promise. Weeks have passed since I left my son with my cousin, weeks since I stopped being part of his routine. I'm no longer the one who serves him breakfast, who fixes his uniform, who tells him everything's going to be okay, even when it's not. Now I'm just the woman who sleeps on someone else's sofa, who showers when she can, who eats what's left over, who smiles with guilt and speaks in a low voice so as not to bother anyone. I look for a job every day, but with a broken record, without support, without anyone to recommend me. Everything is uphill. I've lied in interviews, I've said I have family support. I've hidden that I have a son. I've swallowed my pride down to the last bite. And still, nothing. My parents don't call, they don't ask about their grandson. I guess they think I've already done enough damage. My ex-partner, I never heard from him again. His therapist told him to erase me from his life, and apparently that was the one piece of advice he actually followed. And my son's father, well, he did what he always did, disappear when I'm no use to him. Sometimes I wonder if the mistake was wanting my son to have a family, if I confused love with need, presence with redemption, if I put my hope in the wrong place over and over again. Other times I wonder if maybe I'm the common denominator in the disaster. The other day, my friend found me crying in silence. I sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my legs with an empty stomach and a head full of voices. She offered me tea. She told me I needed help. Professional help. She said it carefully, with affection, but all I felt was shame, because I don't even have enough dignity left to receive compassion. And the worst part is my son doesn't blame me. He video calls me, he shows me drawings, he tells me things about school, he tells me he loves me, and I smile, I tell him everything's fine, that we'll be together again very soon, but every time I hang up I cry as if my soul is being extinguished. Because I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I'll be able to give him anything more than broken promises. I don't know if I even deserve for him to keep waiting for me. The other day he asked if he could stay for sleepover for the weekend, and I had to tell him no, that the house where I'm staying isn't safe, that there's no bed. that there's no space. He didn't get angry. He just looked down and said, "Then I'll wait for you a little longer." And that destroyed me because children shouldn't have to wait. They should have, feel, live. And my son only has what I can scratch from the bottom of this ruin I've become. I don't want pity. I don't want comfort. I don't want advice on healing first to be able to give love. I'm not at that stage anymore. I'm at the stage where the only thing I want is not to sink any further, not to disappear completely, not to become the story my son will tell in therapy when he's an adult. I know I failed. I know I lost everything because of decisions no one forced me to make. I know I had options, and I chose poorly. I repeated patterns. I lied to myself. I tried to justify the unjustifiable under the guise of I'm doing it for my son. And now I have nothing. No partner, no family, no home, no promises I can keep. All I have is a video call every so often, a poorly scanned drawing, a name engraved on my heart that I don't know if it belongs to me anymore. Not all mistakes can be fixed. Not everything that's broken can be put back together. Sometimes love saves us. Sometimes love also destroys. Story 2. I took my son's dog to comfort my stepdaughter, told him to stop playing the victim, and even compared him to her in front of everyone on Christmas night. I did it all because I wanted my son to be more mature. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. My name's Marina, I'm 39, Samuel's mother and Camila's stepmother. It all started the day I decided my stepdaughter would never feel displaced in my home. I decided it like it was a mission, as if someone had put an invisible medal on me and told me, "Now prove it." Camila came into my life at 14 with a story I repeated to justify everything. Absent mother, broken promises, birthdays without a call. Every time she raised her voice or demanded something, I didn't see a whim. I saw abandonment, I saw fear, and I swore to myself that with me she would never feel it again. Samuel was 16. He was always quiet. One of those kids who don't ask you for anything loudly. His world fit in his room, in his drawings, in Bruno. Bruno was his shadow. They'd slept together since the dog was a puppy. I used to say it was a phase, that he was too old, that he had to let go. The funny thing is I never asked myself why I had so much patience for Camila and so many demands for Samuel. I guess I associated silence with strength. If he doesn't protest, he can take it. If he doesn't cry, it doesn't hurt. That very convenient logic. At first it was small things. If there were 2 desserts, one was for her first. If we went out, I'd ask her what she wanted to do. Samuel accepted. He always accepted. I kept telling myself that he understood, that he knew his sister needed more. Because that's what I said, sister, as if the word erased any inequality. I remember the first time Samuel asked for something he really wanted. A tablet to draw better. It wasn't a whim, it was his way of breathing. I told him to understand that there were priorities, that there were expenses, that Camila was adjusting. I told him something worse. I told him, "You always have me." Now that phrase goes around in my head, as if it were a hollow promise. As if I were actually saying, "You can wait." Camila redecorated her room. We painted the walls, changed furniture. There was a birthday trip, photos, smiles, comments about how grateful she was. I absorbed that gratitude, as if it were oxygen. It made me feel needed, important. Samuel started to disappear from the table before finishing. He didn't yell, he didn't argue, he just left. I called it an attitude, adolescence, silent drama, until the night of Bruno. Camila said the dog made her feel safe, that she had nightmares, that if he slept with her she wouldn't be afraid. She said it with that broken voice that activated something immediate in me. Samuel said no. It was the first time I saw him cling to something firmly. He didn't raise his voice, he just said no, and I felt I had to decide in that second what kind of mother I wanted to be. I didn't think much about it. I took the dog from his arms and brought it to her room. "You're a big boy now," I told him. I remember his hands being left empty, literally empty, as if he didn't know where to put them. Camila didn't say thank you. She just closed the door. That night the house was silent, but it wasn't a normal silence. It was thick, as if something had been moved and nobody knew how to put it back. I went to bed convinced I had done the right thing, that I was teaching them to share, to mature, that one day Samuel would understand. I didn't know that at that moment I had started to teach him something else, to be quiet. After that night, something settled wrong. It wasn't immediate. There was no dramatic scene or a slammed door that made me react. It was more subtle. Samuel stopped coming down for breakfast. At first I thought it was laziness, then that he was tired. Then I just stopped asking him. Bruno started sleeping in Camilla's room. I myself took charge of taking him there. I told myself that this way she rested better, that she was calmer. Samuel no longer argued if the dog passed by him. He didn't even look at it. That indifference seemed like maturity to me. Now I know it was something else. At the table, Camilla talked a lot about her friends, about what she wanted, about what she needed. If she asked for money to go out, I found a way. If she wanted to change something in her room, we did it. There was always a valid reason. There was always a wound to compensate for. Samuel started wearing the same sweatshirt every day, a big gray one, as if he wanted to become invisible inside it. One day, he mentioned that Camilla had taken his console without asking. I told him not to exaggerate, to share, not to make a drama. I used that word too much. Drama, as if everything he felt was an exaggeration. The drawing notebooks began to collect dust. I saw them when I went into his room to leave clean clothes. Before they were open, full of lines, of characters, of worlds I didn't understand but admired in silence. Then they were closed, stacked untouched. I didn't ask him why he stopped drawing. I assumed it was a phase. Teenagers change. That's what I told myself. Camilla, on the other hand, seemed more demanding every week. She wanted to stay out later, more money, more attention. If Esteban suggested that maybe we were being unequal, I got defensive. I told him someone had to make up for what life had taken from her, that I wasn't going to be another woman who made her feel less. I said it with conviction, as if it were an unquestionable moral principle. At Christmas, I did something that still wakes me up. At dawn we were all at the table, my nephews. Laughter, noise. Camilla had helped decorate and wouldn't stop receiving compliments. Samuel was quiet, staring at his plate. I don't remember what triggered my comment. Maybe a dry response. Maybe just my impatience. Learn from your sister, I said just like that in front of everyone. Some cousins laughed. Camilla smiled uncomfortably, but proud. Samuel didn't look up. He kept staring at his plate, as if he were trying to disappear into it. At that moment, I thought I was motivating him, that a public comparison would push him to change his attitude. I saw it as a necessary push. He didn't leave his room that night. Weeks later, the school called. Unjustified absences. Dropping grades. I was surprised, but not as much as I should have been. When I confronted him, he exploded. It was the first time he really yelled. "You erased me," he said. "Ever since she arrived, I stopped being your son." I felt he was exaggerating, that he was dramatizing everything to blame me. I told him I wouldn't tolerate scenes, that he was being ungrateful. I took his cell phone away as punishment. I thought discipline would center him. Meanwhile, Camilla continued to grow in space, not just physically, emotionally. If she had a problem with a friend, I was there. If she was scared at night, I was there. If she wanted something, I found a way to get it. Sometimes, very few times, I noticed something strange. A quick look between them, an attention I couldn't name, but I preferred not to delve deeper. It was more comfortable to believe it was all teenage rivalry. Esteban started to say the house felt divided, that one screamed, and the other disappeared. I told him he was exaggerating, that what we had was an adaptation process, that Samuel had to learn to share the space, but the truth is the space was no longer shared. It was occupied. One afternoon, I found Samuel sitting on the patio, watching Bruno play alone. He didn't get closer, he didn't call him, he just watched him. There was something in his expression that I couldn't read, or didn't want to. I asked him if everything was okay. He said, yes, dry, short, as if any extra word was an unnecessary effort. That was the last time I tried to really talk to him before everything started to visibly break, because until that moment I still believed I was building a fairer home. I didn't see that in my attempt to protect the one who made more noise, I was silencing the one who was running out of air. There's something that isn't said much about silence. It's not absence, it's accumulation. It sticks to the walls, to the hallways, to the way one closes doors. I started to notice it late, when it was already part of the landscape. For months I told myself that Samuel was strong, that he always had been, that his way of loving was more discreet. I thought that if he didn't ask me for anything it was because he didn't need much. And when I saw him locked in his room, I assumed he was in his world as always. That version reassured me. It was more comfortable, but there were small details that now, looking back, seem like screams. Once I found one of his drawings torn in the trash. It wasn't crumpled by accident. It was torn in the center, as if he had wanted to break it in two. I held it for a moment. I thought about asking him.
I didn't.
I told myself that invading his space would only make things worse. Camila, on the other hand, occupied every corner. If she was happy, we all knew it. If she was sad, too. And I would run. I always ran to her. There was something in her intensity that made me feel useful, necessary. When she said thank you, when she hugged me in front of others, I felt I was doing things right, that I was fixing something. With Samuel there was no applause, no loud gratitude, just presence. And I confused that calm with a guarantee. Sometimes I caught myself thinking that he should understand, that he should be more mature, that at the end of the day he had always had me. Camila hadn't. That phrase came back to my head so many times that it stopped sounding cruel. You always have me. As if that were enough to replace everything else. There was an afternoon when Esteban told me something that bothered me more than I admitted. He told me I was raising a dependent daughter and a resigned son, that one demanded and the other faded. I defended myself. I said he didn't understand what it was to compensate for a wound, that I wasn't going to be another woman who failed Camila. But that night I stayed awake longer than usual. I thought about the scene with Bruno, about Samuel's empty hands, about Christmas, about the word drama coming out of my mouth so easily, it made me uncomfortable. Not enough to change, but enough for something to shift inside. I tried to get closer one more time. I entered his room without knocking. He was sitting on the bed, looking at the ceiling. I asked him if he wanted to talk. He told me it wasn't necessary, that he already understood how things worked. That phrase stung me, how things worked. It didn't sound like adolescence, it sounded like a conclusion. For the first time I doubted, not my intention but my results, but even that doubt I arranged in my favor. I thought it was a difficult phase, that siblings always compete, that time would put everything in its place. I clung to the idea that I was building resilience in him, that one day he would thank me for making him stronger. What I never wanted to see was that strength isn't born from constant lack, it's born from balance. And I had been tipping the scale for months with the conviction that I was being fair. Camila started asking for more permissions, more money, more freedom. Each demand was accompanied by a story of insecurity, of fear of being alone, of feeling not enough. I responded with concessions. I told myself it was temporary, that when she healed she would stabilize. I didn't see that by avoiding any limits I was creating another kind of void. The house started to feel strange. There were no big arguments, but there was an unspoken tension. Esteban spoke less. Samuel almost never came downstairs. Camila monopolized the air, and I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing until the school called again. This time it wasn't just about grades, it was about more frequent absences, about unsubmitted assignments. They told me he seemed disconnected. That word hit me differently. Disconnected. I confronted him again.
I didn't yell.
I tried to sound understanding. He looked at me as if he were seeing someone he no longer recognized. I don't need anything, he said. I already understood that here, whoever screams the loudest is the one who wins. I didn't know what to answer. I felt something like fear, but I covered it with authority. I talked to him about responsibility, effort, future. He nodded as always, and that feeling left me more restless than any shout. That night, for the first time, I couldn't convince myself that everything was under control. There was a strange feeling, like when you know you forgot something important but don't remember what. And still I didn't change anything because admitting I was wrong meant accepting I had been unfair for too long, and that honestly scared me more than any silence. The escalation wasn't an immediate explosion. It was an accumulation that one day decided to fall on top of everyone. Camila started coming home later. At first it was 15 minutes, then an hour. There was always an explanation, there was always a story that justified the delay. I defended her before hearing her out completely. Esteban started to lose his patience. I told him not to be harsh, not to repeat the abandonment she knew. One Saturday, she didn't come home to sleep. I called her friends. No one knew anything, or so they said. I sat on the sofa looking at the door as if I could force it to open. When she appeared at noon, she didn't apologize. She said she needed space. I hugged her. I promised her she would always have a safe place here. Samuel watched from the hallway. He said nothing. The requests for money became more frequent. She said she needed it for outings, for school things, for gifts. I didn't want to mistrust. To check meant to accept that maybe I was wrong, and I was already too invested in that savior narrative to dismantle it with a suspicion. Until one day the drawer where I kept some jewelry was empty, not completely, but enough to notice.
Cash was also missing.
I felt a strange cold in my chest. I didn't think of external thieves, I thought of her, and I hated that thought. I called her. She didn't answer. I waited. She didn't come back that night. I found a note on her desk. I need to live my life. Don't look for me. That was all. I remember sitting on her perfectly made bed. The room was tidy, as if there had never been chaos inside. I called the police. Report, questions, dates. I answered as if I were talking about another family. Esteban didn't yell. That was worse. He looked at me and said I had turned the house into an invisible battlefield where one screamed and the other disappeared. I didn't argue. I had no strength. Samuel didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't reproach anything. He just continued his minimal routine. School. Room. Silence. The following days were a mix of anxiety and waiting. Every notification on my phone made me jump. Every car that passed forced me to look out the window. There was no concrete trace, only the certainty that she had left with money I had facilitated for her for months, without asking too many questions. And then I understood something I didn't want to accept. I had protected her fragility so much that I never taught her limits. I never taught her consequences. Meanwhile, Samuel turned 18. There was no party, no gathering. I asked him what he wanted to do. He said nothing. I offered to take him out to dinner. He said it wasn't necessary. That night, he left a letter on the table. "Don't worry, I won't be your problem anymore." I read that sentence several times before I understood it. I went to his empty room. The notebooks were gone, the clothes too, only dust on the desk and a perfectly made bed. Bruno was tied up on the patio. I approached the dog, and he didn't wag his tail. He didn't look at me with that automatic joy as before. He just stood still as if waiting for someone who wasn't me. I tried to call Samuel, blocked. In a matter of weeks, I had lost both of them in different ways, one running away with money and a brief note, the other leaving in silence with a sentence that pierced me more than any insult. The house was left impeccable, without arguments, without demands, without slammed doors. Everything in its place, too much in its place. Esteban started talking about separation.
He didn't yell.
He said he needed space, that he didn't know if he could rebuild something on what I had denied for so long. I listened and felt that the words bounced off walls that were too clean. I had wanted to be fair. I had wanted to balance, and now the damage was clear, visible, impossible to cover up. A daughter disappeared with money in her pocket, an adult son who decided it was healthier to leave than to keep trying to exist in my house. I was left alone on the sofa one night, looking at the door for the second time in my life, but this time without knowing who I was really waiting for. And I understood that some decisions are not undone with apologies, they just leave empty rooms that no one wants to inhabit again. The house is silent now. Not that thick silence from before, but a clean, almost tidy one. There are no backpacks thrown around, no arguments over the bathroom, no doors that close in anger. Everything is in its place, too much in its place. Bruno sleeps at my feet some nights, but he no longer runs to the door when he hears my steps. Sometimes he lifts his head as if he's still waiting for someone taller, younger to appear. I pet his back and feel that even he understands what took me years to accept. I don't know where Camila is. The police still have no clear news. Sometimes I imagine she's okay, that she's using the money to start something new. Other times I wonder if I protected her so much that she never learned to stand on her own. I defended her from the world, but I didn't teach her to face it. I don't know if Samuel still draws. That doubt weighs on me more than anything else. I wonder if he opened a notebook somewhere else, if he went back to filling pages that I didn't know how to value. I wonder if he still thinks about Bruno, or if he learned not to need him. I've reread his letter so many times that the sentence no longer seems like ink, it seems like a sentence. Don't worry, I won't be your problem anymore. For years I repeated to him not to make a drama, not to exaggerate, to share, and he, in his most silent way possible, stopped being one. Esteban is barely home. We talk just enough. There are no open reproaches, but no closeness either. He told me I turned the house into an invisible battlefield where one screamed and the other disappeared. That phrase has been floating between us like a truth no one can deny. Sometimes I find myself looking for justifications. I tell myself I was trying to compensate, that someone had to protect the one who needed it most, that I didn't want to be the stepmother who repeats the abandonment. But the intention doesn't change the result. I clearly remember the night I took the dog from him. I remember his empty hands. At that moment, I thought I was teaching him to grow up. I thought I was being firm. I thought silence was a sign of maturity. I thought wrong because the silence wasn't strength, it was surrender. There are days when I walk down the hall and feel like I'm going through a museum of decisions. Camila's room is untouched. Samuel's looks like a blank page no one wanted to write on again. And I'm in the middle holding memories as if they were proof that I once wanted to do the right thing. I realized something uncomfortable. I valued loud gratitude, big smiles, public hugs. It made me feel needed. With Samuel there was no show, there was presence, and I took it for granted. I believed that the one who asked for the least was the one who needed the least. I believed that protecting one justified demanding more from the other. I believed I was balancing. And now I wonder if protecting one meant losing the other. Did I really protect anyone? Popular comments. Anonymous comment 1. It's clear you wanted to make up for something, but you forgot to look at the one who is always there. Sometimes the one who doesn't scream is the one who needs the most. It hurts to read. OP's response. I guess I confused patience with resilience. Anonymous comment 2. Taking his dog was a hard blow. It wasn't just a pet, it was his refuge. There are decisions that seem small and mark everything. OP's response. At that moment I thought I was making him grow. Now I'm not sure. Anonymous comment 3. Your stepdaughter needed support, yes, but also limits. Without that you left her adrift, and you left your son alone. OP's response.
Yes.
I built that scenario. Anonymous comment 4. Comparing him at Christmas in front of everyone must have hurt more than you can imagine. Public humiliations are not easily forgotten. OP's response. I wish I could erase that dinner. Anonymous comment 5. Your husband saw the problem, and yet the dynamic continued. No one stopped it in time. OP's response. He spoke. I didn't listen. Anonymous comment 6. Calling someone's pain drama is to minimize it. Sometimes that breaks more than a scream. OP's response. That word weighs on me now. Anonymous comment 7. Your son didn't have to stay to prove anything. He left because he needed to save himself. OP's response. It just hurts to have pushed him. Anonymous comment 8. Gratitude is not demanded or bought. It's built with balance. OP's response. I learned that too late. Anonymous comment 9. Maybe you protected Camila so much that she never learned consequences. That's also abandonment. In another way, OP's response. Maybe I protected her from the world, but not from herself. Anonymous comment 10. You chose the one who screamed the loudest and didn't listen to the silence. Now that silence is the only thing left. OP's response. The silence was always harder to hear.